Welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about competency mapping, assessment centers. So exactly what we are looking into it as to what attributes a person requires to excel in his probably her job. What are the qualities, what are the skills, what is the attributes we are tracking that maps actually to the success of the job incumbent at that rate. So what does research indicates? Research indicates that sources of 50% of job performance problem is that people worry about their job. They are insecure about their job. Probably they are insecure about the performance that they are putting up during the job. 25% on the job performances problems, inability to identify the gap per se, and that is very true. If you want to go around it, the actuals might be somewhere on the standard out here, but the standards would be on the other scale. So what do we look into it? This is actual and this is standard. Now in the standard there is something called gap, and this is what the gap needs to be identified. A person is not aware of this thing. As a result, a competency is required as on when on basis. The role of competency mapping question comes around it. How does mapping helps out in performing optimally in a job? Basic idea is we need to understand what are the key attributes that is required or the job demand per se, so to be called as a successfully completed. We need to identify the key competencies, and how do we go around it? First and foremost is job evaluation. You need a skill set for a, let's say, for an organization who is in the receptionist, a first line customer handler, or should I say in the same organization somebody who's in the production level. Do their two jobs are akin to each other? Are they similar? Probably no. In fact, they're in the same organization, that the product that they are going to make perhaps has to be sold along. There's a marketing divisions, including these are all your first line or a lower skill level employees, and they have different required skill set. So the receptionist must be looking at complaint, perhaps mails, where the production is looking at the quality part of it. Marketing perhaps is looking to push the product in the market and collect the invoices, thereby that is being raised around here. So we need to understand every person of them has a job, and their each of the job is completely different from one another, and that is what job evaluation is all about it. Now to do a job of a production, of a receptionist, and that of a marketing, it requires training, and training has to be different because they are in a different vertical, different segment, should I say, functional orientation. Then comes the recruitment part. So we need to understand the three key competencies: job evaluation, training, and recruitment as per se. So let me define competency. Perhaps it is just the capacity that exists in a person that leads to a behavior that meets job demand. The job, what the incumbent is actually doing around it. Remember, I've compared three jobs to you for the audience of this particular video. The job of a receptionist, the job of a personal assistant involved in production, and probably of a marketing executive who is involved into not only marketing and probably collection of revenue and sales thereby. So each job has different demands within the parameters of organizational environment, and that is the reason why I have elaborated three jobs for you. So that in brings in the desired result. A receptionist have different objectives. A production assistant would be having different objectives. Similarly for the marketing executive. So it's a capacity that a person holds to convince a person in terms of marketing, for in terms of production, put in more labors, put in more technicalities, get the quality outcome. Probably for a receptionist, a host of activities that needs to be done around it. So yes, the capacity that exists in a person that leads to a behavior. Remember, behavior that meets the job demand. So your attributes that is fixing with the requirement of the job, and that is what job definition is all about it. So competency and competence, are they two terms alike? Probably not. Now let me allow you. Competency is a person related concept. It is person specific, an individual specific, that refers to the dimension of the behavior lying between the competent performer. So yes, there might be many receptionists, there might be many marketing executives, there might be many production assistant altogether, but you will see only few of them being preferred, or they actually excel in their life. Now, why do we why do we actually see this in real life? Because the person who was successful in their job actually display a host of attributes in a much more frequent fashion than the other person. And that is why is competency is all about it. A competency is person specific. Whereas, let me allow me to bring it to competence level, a work related concept that refers to the area of the work that a person is competent in. So, now can I give you a different example for you to understand? There might be n numbers of surgeon. When I say surgeon, is the medical surgery that doctors perform on individuals, on human beings. There are a number of surgeons available, but only few of them actually make a mark or preferred people prefer to go to that particular surgeon to get their surgery done. Why? The reason is everybody is a qualified surgeon, but only few of them are renowned. Few of them are in demand, and that is what competence is all about. It so every surgeon is competent in the form of doing a surgery, but then only few people who display that attributes, that proficiency, that exact 100% competence. That is what competency is all about. It the 100% success attributes, the confidence that the surgeon displays is what competence is all about. It so competence and competencies, often referred as a combination with one another, often are interchangeably used. But for clarification, please understand competency is the attribute that the person display. Remember, when the attribute I'm talking about is the requisite attribute, the requested one, the attribute that is in demand. Whereas competence is the bare minimum qualification or the bare minimum know-how that every person might be having around it. So here we have this and competencies which have been interchangeably used more often than not. Let us talk about skills, capability acquired through practices. It can be financial skills such as vetting or verbal skill, making a presentation perhaps. Now, that's one of the skills that goes around it. Everybody might have knowledge, but then few of us can only give a good presentation or make it a convincing one at it. The audience needs to be understood. Then comes the knowledge, understanding and acquired knowledge through learning. It is what people have to know to be able to perform our job, and that is what we're looking at into it. So we have skills, we have knowledge set. Everybody might be knowledgeable, but do they have the proficiency in employing the knowledge for their skills? Probably no. Then comes the component of competencies, as in personal attribute. Is the flair a person carries with himself or herself? It's the flair. I repeatedly telling it to you. Be it the position of receptionist, a surgeon, a marketing executive, or a production executive. Now, what are the personal attributes that goes around it? Probably a marketing executive might not be using explicits in his or probably her day in day out interaction with the customers. But on the other hand, the production assistant might be using explicit every now and then in the production shop floor. That is what the personal attribute is all about. It so a person who is abusing can be fit for a production assistant or production executive, but may not be a right fit for a marketing job. So that is what a personal attribute that goes around it. It's the behavior, the observable demonstration of competency, skills, knowledge, and personal attributes that comes around it. And this is what exactly we are looking out every now and then. So I'll just give you a classic understanding as to what is required by KSA, and now we are talking about behaviors. Now, what is KSA? Some people say knowledge, skills, and abilities. There are certain authors who say ASK, ask. Abilities, skills, and knowledge, one and the same thing. Remember these three things, and the manifestation is out here in this behavior. If the manifestation is a right, you will have an optimum result out here. This will be a star performer, as the case might be. So yes, this is the competencies model which is there in leadership development. So you have to have knowledge, you have to have skill set, you have to have the abilities, and probably with this mixture, if you have the right behavior, when you can apply it to your behavior, you will get a wow result, as the case might be. Competency model is a set of competency that includes key behavior required for excellent performer in a particular role, as the case might be, and that is what we would be looking at it. Design decision. In terms of general design, competence models should be guided by organizational strategy, which is in turn shaped with four factors. One is of mission and vision. Now, mission and vision is Vision is the overall objective, the goals around it, and the mission is how do you achieve that vision. Now, this needs to be understood as far as mission and vision are concerned. Second objective is stakeholder requirement. Believe me or not, everybody who is associated with a job, with an organization, are a stakeholder. Let's say the investors would like to have a different take onto it. The investor would like to have a return on their capital, what the money they have invested. The employees is also a stakeholder. They would love to have wages and salaries being paid to them for the amount of labor, skills, and knowledge that they bring onto the table. So that is one of the skill set the stakeholders engage requirement. Then let us talk about another stakeholder in terms of customers. Customers, on the other hand, would be looking for value for money, quality product, absolutely spick and span. So you see, I've just stated up three stakeholders. There can be vendors, there can be government regulators, and there can be n numbers of other stakeholders which I am not discussing at all. So we have mission, we have visions, we have stakeholders requirement. The third one is of market realities. The market realities might be all about supply and demand, the amount of competition that comes around it. And the last one is the core capabilities of firm. Now, what is core capabilities of firm is when a firm excels in doing something very good, one attributes only, nothing beyond it. So we look into core capabilities of the firm time and again as on when on basis. Factors for designing competency model. Now, what are the factors? If we look into it, there are 7 factors that I have noted down, and this is for me the holy grail out here. First and foremost thing is the contextual part. A person who is excelling in a first world country or excelling in the Fortune 500 companies might not do very well in the third world country or a developing country or not so fortune or probably a local companies per se. So contextualization is very important. If you have the right environment, people might excel, or probably there are people made for certain environments. So no, there is nothing called right environment or a wrong environment. The developed countries or the developing countries, as the case might be. Next is all of level of orientation. It is your level to understand and interact with the environment, the contextual part of it. That level of orientation has to be there. Now, there are people who might be linguistically incapable to communicate in the local dialect. Now, that becomes a demerit. Probably he or she is actually doing wonderfully well, where there is no language barrier for them. Then comes a level of complexities. Every society, every organization, every market has different complexity that brings around it. Their supply chain is different, model is different, their revenue model might be different, their currency fluctuation might be different. Most importantly, the rules and regulation fixated by the federal government has different sense altogether. So that brings in the level of complexity as the case might be. Model should be linked to a strategy. Definitely, yes. Every model is not workable and every model never fails. So you need to understand which strategy. It should be strategy fed model. Let's be very specific. Talking about specificity, can the model be company specific as and when on basis that goes around it? For example, McDonald's is a fast food chain doing wonderful business in many parts of the world, and in different parts of the world might not be doing it. Let's say for the Middle East, it is not doing so good. Why? Because beef, or should I say the pork burger, is actually not been done for, accepted at all in the Middle East. So they need to do it around it. Probably there are regions which are religiously very, very sensitive. Probably there are countries who are towards vegetarianism. They might not be looking for a beef burger or a meat burger or chicken burger. Probably they are looking at some vegetables or vegetable alternatives to it. So McDonald's has to cater their solutions accordingly. In fact, in Germany, McDonald's actually serves beer in their fast food outlet, because in Germany, beer is something which is very, very commonplace practices around here. So you need to understand it has to be company specific. Model should be flexible, as I said it with McDonald's example. Model should be future oriented. We should not be having a fixations over what exactly is happening as of today and how well or how good that we are flourishing around it. We need to understand how it can relate to the future part. Talking about the mapping process, now how do we go around it? I will just explain approximately 5 or 6 stages altogether. First and foremost thing is to understand the mission and the vision of the organization, what exactly the business the organization is supposed to do around it. Next is the stage 2, wherein we understand which are the indicators which makes you competitively much more ahead than your competitors, competitively ahead than your future, your uniqueness of the company that goes around it, your competitive advantage, the core competence that we are talking about, the behavioral, the functional aspect that needs to be asserted altogether. Stage 3 is identification of the competence. Now, this is the crux of the mapping process altogether. Stage 3. Remember, we need to identify the competencies. We need to measure them because anything that cannot be measured cannot be managed. Required level of competencies for each job families. Detailed description of the capacity based on the indicator. Care should be taken that the indicator should be measurable and given objective judgment as on when on basis. That needs to be understood time and again. We come to the stage 4. This stage requires the assessment. You have actually enacted, executed the operations altogether. Now is the time when you need to assess and probably reconfigure your next steps towards the future. So method of assessment is either through the 360-degree feedback or probably through the assessment centers, as the topic for this thing is all about it. Competitive assessment center. So what do we need to be ready for the assessment center beforehand, before actually it happens around it? First, what are we going to measure? Second, how are we going to measure? So we need to identify the competencies. We need to objectively determine the parameters for what to measure and how to measure. Determine the tools. Prepare the schedule of assessment. There might be a pre-mode model, during process, and post-model thing. So you need to understand the mapping process as on when on basis it comes around it. Training to the assessor should indicate that through understanding of competencies and the tools also have a behavior to be documented per se. These are things that needs to be ascertained as on when on basis. Training to the assessor should be indicating absolute understanding of the competencies thereby. So we come to the fifth stage and the sixth stage, as I promised to it. This is where you actually see you have gone through the competencies, you have actually measured it, you actually monitored it, and you need to give feedback. What you are doing good and what things needs to be an improve. Now that is what stage 5 competencies is all about it. Where do they stand? How do we measure? What things can be improved around it. Stage 6 is a detailed report of the competencies assessed and also for the development of the areas there and there. So what are we looking out here? Exactly speaking is the organizational direction, is the mission and vision, core competencies, stakeholder requirements, and the market realities. Now, these are organizational direction. Without this, the organization cease to exist. Then we shift to the core competencies, which means what strategies will make the organization profitable. You should always see a green bottom line and not a red bottom line. So therein we need to understand for this core competencies we need to have a competency mapping. The core strategies needs to be mapped with the core competencies. So yes, we are talking about core competencies. Yes, we are talking about the management competencies, the leadership competencies. Herein we bring in the manpower, humans, resource subsistence, all about culture, culture of trust, culture of faith, culture of belief, believe in the values of the organization that comes around it, trust in in your co-workers altogether. This is all about training and development and probably the direction that the top management actually gives around it. Let me give you the benefits about competency mapping model. For the company, it reinforces corporate strategies, cultures, and vision. Absolutely clear. You once and for all, if vision has been defined and been stated, and people continuously work around it, harp around the vision, people will automatically get conscious, and that is what reinforcing of corporate strategy is all about. It establishing the expectation of performance excellence. People coming on time, probably I'm just talking about very basic. People coming on time, doing their work, not idling, and probably leaving on time. We are treating the scenario of punctuality among the employees, and has to be done right from the top and not from the bottom. If people see each other coming on time, people will be motivated to be on time. People will be motivated to be punctual in their work. So that is what will give a systematic approach to the professional development. So for the company is to reinforce the strategy, the culture, the vision, establish expectation for performance excellence, increase effectiveness of training, Provide a common understanding of scope and requirement for specific scope per se as the case might be. For the managers, let me give you, I've already spoken for the company, let me give it to the managers before I come to the employees. First and foremost, for the leaderships and the managers is to identify the criteria, performance criteria, and they need to inculcate in themselves so that people can actually see what needs to be done to improve an accuracy and ease of hiring. Provide more objective standard, being on number scale, being on time, producing so many goods. So many should be filled in with digits. So many goods. 3 tons per day TPD of steel needs to be produced based on the capacity of the of your factory probably. Clarify standards of excellence for easier communication of performances. Provide a clear foundation for dialogue to occur between managers, employees about performances, development, and career related issues as on when on basis. And this needs to be done time and again. Now, I have already said for the corporates, the companies, the managers, let us talk about the employees. Why should employees be left in the dark? Give them exact criteria for being qualified as success. So identify the success criteria to make sure that they are comfortable in the job. Provide development tools, methods for enhancing the skills. Provide the basis for more objective dialogues with the manager. Support for a more specific and objective assessment of their strength out and there. We need to understand how we are going to proceed, and accordingly we need to promote. In the end, I would love to come to the conclusion that there are only two options to develop competencies within a time frame or quit the role. So either you shape up or you ship out. Now, there are no other options there to perform. You need to perform or perish. Either you perform or you perish. Now these are inadequate role competency would always come across with it. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. I hope everybody has understood what core competencies or competencies mapping assessment centers work are supposed to do around it, and how does it benefit the organization in the longest form of run. Thank you for watching this video.